Welcome to the Babies in Business Podcast. Join your hosts, Rachel and Avram Gonzalez, real-life parents and business partners. Each week on Babies in Business, Rachel and Avram create a space for entrepreneurial parents to find their own way. They'll dive into insights on topics like leadership, efficiency, self-awareness, budgeting, and human psychology as they nurture their family and build their business. Here's your hosts, Avram and Rachel.
It's been about a year since we recorded a podcast about really terrible people. Maybe a little bit more than that. Today, Rachel and I are reflecting back on something that happened about a year ago and a partnership gone really bad.
Yeah.
Sideways, ups and downs. It's a saga. One that we'll share some details with for you today. But I think the big takeaway here is in our sharing about the worst partnership ever might save you some future heartache, taking note of some of the red flags that we're going to share. And you'll also get to hear some of our big takeaways and things that we did to improve our business as a result of it.
Yep.
Any other thoughts before we jump into this, Rachel?
It's a wild ride.
Just that we've waited a long time to share it and felt uncomfortable sharing it.
Yeah.
Of course, we're going to keep many details private because it's not about the person or persons.
Right.
It's about the lessons and things that we learn along the way.
Right. Yeah. So we have some really great takeaways here. And like you said, we want you to have some information moving forward for you in your business and maybe save yourself the heartache that we went through of just working with somebody that was not great to work with.
No, because you know how it is running the business and working with your spouse and all the things at the same time. These stresses creep back into your household, into your relationship, and it's just not fun. So, we do our best to avoid these things as much as possible because they're very unpleasant, but oftentimes you don't know it until you're in it. So hopefully some of the guideposts, signposts here and red flags will be useful. We broke down our story today to make it very simple. We broke it down into 5 key events that occurred.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we could get so caught up and lost in the details that don't, I think, really matter.
Yeah. And like you said, it's not about the details. It's more just understanding kind of what happened and what was seen and the journey a little bit, and then talking about what we actually came away with from that.
So where did it all begin? It began with a relationship that had started several years ago.
Yeah.
And was now ready to mature and go to the next level. It was from a fellow agency owner that said, hey, I've got an amazing client opportunity that I can provide this particular service to them, but they want a lot more.
Yeah.
They want your search engine optimization specialization, your specialness. They want that too.
Yeah.
I can't provide that. Maybe we could team up and do it.
And offer this really great service, all around service together. It would take both of us to accomplish this.
Well, this is very exciting. As agency owners, we spend a lot of time and energy just to generate a solid opportunity.
Right.
For us to work with another business.
Right.
And so the prospect of having another agency bring their sales pipeline directly to us and essentially feed us some deals is pretty attractive.
Absolutely. We were very excited. The story being told to us was really attractive of, there's this great client, they really want these services. I've had this conversation with them and we're in the running, basically.
Yeah. So that was where things started, was with a lot of excitement.
Yeah.
And things started to go off the rails in hindsight pretty quickly after that.
Correct.
There were some things that started to happen as talks got closer to actually closing that client that were different than the conversations we'd had in the beginning.
And in that initial opt-in, basically, when it was brought to us and said, hey, this is an awesome client, they're looking for these services. You have these services, I have these services, let's team up, let's do this together. And this is what that would look like.
Yes.
You would have front-facing access to the client. I would have front-facing access to the client. The client would be working with 2 different agencies and they would know it.
Yes.
That's when we opted into working with this client
Yes.
and this actual agency owner.
Yeah, and it was like, well, we'll work together. You'll be public facing. I'll collect the money. I'll
Yeah,
pay you guys. The
right.
client will pay one bill, but they'll
Right,
know
right.
this is being subbed out. It's like, okay, cool. That's great.
And that really worked with our system because we have great ways of working with clients, helping them understand what we're doing for them, what is going on, all that reporting. They have that really great visibility.
Yeah, we pride ourselves in client retention. We have clients that stay 3 to 4 years with us
Right.
on average, and it's because of the high touch service that we offer.
Right.
So things started to change during the conversation as we got closer to signing, which was, we suspected at that point, by the way, they had already signed
Yeah.
the client.
Yep. So technically, even if they brought us on that very day in this time frame, we would already be behind on the timelines that they probably already promised the client. And we were actually really aware of that.
Mm-hmm. Because while we were starting to get this information about, so by the way, you're not going to have access to the client. You're not going to be able to email them as yourself and represent Digital Harvest. It's going to all go through me. And I'm going to need you to change the way you do the reporting, the way you do follow-up, the way you do this. And it was like
none of our systems actually would work. All of our systems would break at this point because it is not, well, if you think about it, nobody likes middlemen for a reason because it is multiple parties. It's at least 3 parties with a middleman.
Yeah.
So that means that everything that we would do, any changes that we would need, any feedback, any input of any kind would go through at least 3 different people. It would be someone on our team, someone on their team, and then someone at that actual end client's team.
Yes.
And that increases the time. Oh my gosh, it can actually quadruple the timeline of a project.
Yeah.
And that doesn't actually work for us.
No, it doesn't work for us, but we were like, oh, this is an opportunity, and maybe we can make this white label agreement work. Maybe this is good. Maybe it's going to be even easier for us because we're not having to do all the client stuff.
Right. And really, in reality, the end client is actually working with this other agency and they're on the hook for all those timelines. So if the timelines don't actually meet up and happen, then they're on the hook for that. So, it was kind of maybe just pushing it down the court a little bit, any of the problems that might come up. So all that's to say, we saw a lot of red flags early on.
Yeah, they wanted to change the deal as the deal was being made.
Right.
In a significant way. It was
After
very
we
much
had a verbal agreement.
misrepresented on 2 different conversations at least up to that point.
Yep.
And then it was all this messiness and making us have to bend. Oh, the final part before we moved to like the third big thing was, we were told that there was this huge, massive family emergency.
Right.
And then they just disappeared. Our point of contact just disappeared.
Right.
And then suddenly...
to the amount of about a month.
About a month.
Like no communication, 0 whatsoever.
Right, just little blips of like, hey, could you send this part so that I can,
And we're like, we're not even in
we're not even in
contract.
contract yet. Like, what is going on? Then you find out, oh, big family thing. My whole life is upside down, but I'm getting it all together and it's going to be fine. Like,
Ugh.
whoa, what happened?
Huge
So,
red flag, but
yep.
we kept going.
Yeah, so that's where it brings us to like this third milestone, which is what Rachel's already alluded to. The communication breakdown was so significant. As soon as signatures were dropped, and that's a whole other thing I think
Yeah.
that we wanted to talk about, that's when we were pretty sure that the other agency had signed the client at maybe a month
Much
or
earlier.
6 weeks before we even started.
Correct.
Urgency was being used to get us to sign documentation, to start the project, to collect payment.
Yeah, there's 3 words that we wrote down: chaos, delays, and urgency. And I think when you're listening to this and you're thinking about maybe signing on this client, or you have somebody that you currently represent and they bring this to your life, urgency, chaos, delays, all these things, that's a big deal. I don't know anybody that likes any of that.
It's the equivalent of drama, I think, in business. In your regular life, people are gossiping and things like that. But when you're trying to do business with a partner and you're met with those 3 things over and over,
Yeah.
it feels like the stress is unimaginable.
Oh, yeah.
So we're feeling this bubbling up over time because, we're communicating our timelines, but not hearing anything back.
Correct.
We're asking for certain things that still haven't been delivered after being promised multiple times. These are essential parts of the onboarding. Usually when we onboard a client, everything happens all at one time, and within 48 hours, we have everything that we need to be fully functional in our role as their search engine optimization service provider.
Right.
But in this case, we were having to drag everything out. And there were some components that we didn't get for almost 6 weeks after
Oh, yeah.
we had onboarded.
Absolutely. And a typical time frame for communication between the agency's representative and us was a week. And that's the soonest.
About a week, yeah.
It was awful. That kind of delay is just unacceptable in our timelines. Our timelines, we don't actually have any real big leeway or give in our timelines that we actually state about when things are going to be finalized. And we do have stuff that we talk to our clients about. Hey, you have to provide us this in order to keep these timelines on track. It's just awful. So, we get through this weird chaos, delay, urgency phase that's going on, and then things aren't going the way that this person, the rep, wanted.
Yeah.
And they just flip out.
Yeah, I remember we were touring the Montessori school down the street with our son Lincoln to enroll him when he turned 3, and I remember getting blown up on my my phone.
Yeah.
I remember getting blown up on my phone and being so stressed because we were getting all this pressure from the other agency owner about certain deliverables that we had said time and time again weren't going to be up for like 3 more weeks.
Well, and that we were well within our timeline.
We were well within the timeline, well within what we had put in our own contract, but because they were so checked out of the process and we knew at this point, suspected, scrambling.
Oh yeah.
Always behind on whatever deliverable.
And then these bogus apologies or whatever, in these emails, it starts out with, I fired this person, or I hired this person, or they're no longer with the company. You hear those too many times and it's kind of like your grandma died and you told me that 8 times. You have 8 grandmas?
Yeah, I mean, in this short little 2-month period, I think they fired like 3 different people.
Right. We suspect that this person is the friend.
Yes.
Or the person that supposedly was fired.
Right. Right. I fired that person. Well, that was you.
Yeah.
Right. We're pretty sure it's an agency of one with maybe some contractors.
Right.
But they could also be the contractors.
Right.
Just always running from behind. So yeah, like Rachel said, they just flipped out. And that was the first real communication that we got from them.
Right.
They flipped out. So the first sign of any issue from their perspective, they flip out.
Right. And we're like, yeah, this, okay, pause. Major pause.
Yeah. And this is where we're going to take a little pause too, because it does end.
Yeah.
We're going to tell you how it ends. Were there any other red flags and stuff that we saw along the way?
I mean, there were so many red flags. When I just think about, I've heard this so many times, when people tell you who they are, believe them. And this person was making it very, very clear who they were and how they functioned. And we were actually just sweeping it under the rug. I don't know. Maybe you think they're having a bad day or this is an anomaly. No, this is really how they function. So, tons of red flags. I mean,
the communication we've discovered over the last 6, 7, 8 years running the agency, if there's a big lag time in communication that's very regular,
yes,
it's a sign of all of the other crap going on behind the scenes. Usually those same people are an operational mess.
Right. Well, and then if you think about it, we noticed that this person was always the one communicating with us. And if your point of contact as an agency to agency is the owner, maybe that's not a good sign. If they don't actually have someone else in that seat, then it's very likely that they could be stretched thin, don't have the time, don't have the bandwidth, whatever that looks like. And we did see that play out to be true.
Mm-hmm.
That we were the ones left holding the bag, but didn't have enough information to do anything about it.
Yeah. Let's see. I think communication was the big thing. We've realized that they were lying a lot from the beginning.
Yep.
It was like, okay, so what can we trust? This,
Yeah.
that, and the other thing.
Yeah. And then, we have this core value here at Digital Harvest of kindness over everything. And that really applies to everything. It's like delivering a message with kindness.
Yes.
You can fire somebody, you could break up with somebody with kindness, you could do all sorts of things with kindness. That's like the flagship core value of our business.
It is.
We don't want to work with people that aren't kind. And we also give that to them. We want to be kind to them, and we are. And that was one of the things that with the communication, when things got rough, there was a lot of blame, a lot of just the way that things were said. There was no tact. It was just unacceptable. You do not talk. I do not accept being talked to like that from a partner that expects me to do something. There was no, hey, I don't know if maybe miscommunication happened, or I don't know about this, or I don't know about that. No benefit of the doubt was given. It was just simply, you did this, you did this, you did this, and you didn't do it right, and this is what we're going to do to fix it. And, just really terrible communication skills.
That word
Not
you
okay.
said, unacceptable.
Absolutely
Those were the
unacceptable.
words that came up for us right away with that first, outburst.
Yeah.
And so that wasn't the end of it.
No.
There was more. There was then, escalating threats of different kinds. Basically, you better do this or I'm not going to send you more business. This
Right.
like dangling of a
I have
carrot.
this business right here waiting to give to you, but I'm holding it off. My thought was, that's bogus. You don't have a client to give us. And even if you did, we wouldn't want them.
Well, and what we realized later was that was all a ploy
Correct.
to try to get us back to the table to discuss who knows what.
Right.
But, we're pretty sure assign us all the blame for their miscommunication.
Yeah.
Eventually, though, where did we end up? We ended up in a place where they withheld payment.
Yep.
They made up excuses about fraud and this and that.
Right.
And then as time went on and we decided not to play that game, we learned that pretty sure there wasn't fraud.
Right.
They
But
just
actually just blocked it.
They just blocked payments and stuff. And so they wanted to then try to strong arm us into keeping the contract and coming to grovel for the money. I don't know.
Yeah. But when we saw that, we're like, you know what? This is actually great. This gives us an out. If they don't pay, we're done.
And that's what we discovered in chatting with our lawyer.
Yeah.
So where it all ended was us seeking some legal counsel to make sure that we were going to be okay.
Yep. Just
And-
cross
and-
our T's, dot our I's.
Yep, there was some verbiage in the contract that we signed, which in hindsight we never should have signed, that was pretty restrictive in your ability to get out of the contract.
Yeah.
So we spoke with that lawyer, we had some fears laid to rest and realized in our conversation with him, he's like, look, if they're holding payment hostage and they don't pay,
You're out.
there is no agreement in place anymore.
Yeah.
They're not paying, you don't have to do anything.
Yep.
And that's where it ended.
Yep.
No payment, nothing, and we have no idea where that left them with their client in that campaign.
Right.
The terms of the contract that we signed make it pretty prohibitive and not a good thing for us to reach out and see if we could help the client in some way.
Right.
It's just what we were forced to sign under urgency was not going to allow us to do what we feel like is the right thing. We unfortunately had to cover our butts.
Yeah. Yeah. But really, in the end, we got the legal advice that we needed. And we came out the other side with a contract for situations like this where we work with another agency that is really, really great. And it will be something that really helps us deliver this great service. And it's the white label service. You go online and I'll just use this example of like someone that manages your PPC and it's a white labeler.
Your pay-per-click marketing.
Marketing, yeah. And you look at their white label offering, you pay the fee, you follow the rules that they give you, the terms of your agreement. And as long as you follow those terms of agreement and you pay, you have them representing you to do this thing. But when you violate that agreement or you don't pay them, you no longer have the service. And that's what we have now, is that we have a contract where if someone wants to white label our services, they sure can do that. But they will be signing our contract and they are bound by those agreements.
Yeah, not the other way around.
Correct.
We should have
And that
not
was-
signed an agreement by the other agency.
Right. So there's a lot of things that we, in hindsight, wouldn't have done and we won't do in the future.
We also learned something, by the way, this is a good one,
Yeah.
regarding contracts. The lawyer shared with us, you know, in domestic disputes and household stuff and people to people, there's the contract you write, and then there's all the other evidence that comes in about how it was signed, when it was signed, was it misrepresented? I didn't understand it, this and that. But the key thing that the lawyer shared with us is when it comes to business contracts, the law treats them differently.
Because they assume that the parties entering into this contract are more sophisticated than just the average Joe or Sally.
Yes. We found that to be so enlightening.
And what they do, tell us what they do.
They treat the whole, quote, case, if it ever went to court, by the 4 sides of that contract, right? So
Meaning what is written, you are held to.
Yes.
And it does not matter on which terms you signed or the fact that things were misrepresented. You have the right and should seek your lawyer's advice prior to signing any contract. Do not sign a contract if your lawyer has not looked over it and advised you about the things that could blow back on you.
Huge learning lesson for us. And
we knew that deep down, but we did feel the urge. There's so many, we can talk about all the reasons, but it doesn't matter at this point.
yeah, we dodged the bullet. You know, we got really lucky that it ended how it did.
Yeah, so the way it ended was that agreement was terminated due to non-payment.
Due to non-payment.
And hallelujah, thank God
Hallelujah.
it was.
Yeah. There were just so many things that happened for us. I just think the big thing of it is it was so empowering. Like, okay, go back and listen to episode 21 of the podcast. You can go to babiesandbiz.com/21. And that's the episode called Worst Client Ever.
Yeah.
We learned so much from that experience and we shared it in that podcast. That's similar to here. But I think the takeaways for partnership are a bit different.
Yeah.
Because it's just so much more involved.
Yeah.
And I think, I know you had something to say.
I was just going to say, you know, one of the things that we didn't actually talk about was what went on between you and me and how we navigated this situation. So what happened is this person had reached out to us and just thrown demands out. This first initial communication when they blew up. And I remember having an opinion about it and how we would move forward. And I remember you having an opinion. And I'd love to hear what your opinion was, just really quickly. Do you remember how you felt?
I don't recall. It was such a long time ago.
Well, you just felt like, this is what you shared with me, that, okay, we'll just bend. I mean, these are outside of the contract, but we could totally make this happen.
Sure.
And I was like, no, Avram, this is where we make our stand. We are not doing this. This is outside of the contract. We don't have to provide this. And we're going to stick to our guns because I tell you what, if we bend, this is what our relationship looks like. There are no, in our relationship, in our business, we call velvet ropes. You know how you're going to get into a club or a queue and there are velvet ropes that mark where you're going. We keep clients in our velvet ropes. That means within our system, things are functioning, and they were well outside the velvet ropes with these requests. And I was bringing us back to, no, this is how we function, and we're going to hold them to it. I know you were a little uncomfortable with that, but when we talked about it, this person was really unreasonable, and we were going to be held hostage this whole time. So it is an opportunity for you to put your foot down when you see things like this and say no more.
Yeah. It's self-care.
Yeah.
It's being kind to you.
Yep.
You know, you have to have the courage to walk away
Absolutely.
from a bad relationship.
Yep.
Because that bad relationship is going to take up your time, energy, and resources that a better one would be more served.
And in the end, you're the one that suffers
That's right.
because it doesn't work for you, but you're not speaking up for yourself. That could be in personal life, that could be in business, whatever that is, have the courage to say no.
Yeah. What's really cool about it is that was one of our first conversations about this white label possibility for our business. And since then, we've had several other agencies we've talked with that have been, we know that they're going to go really, really well
Right.
because we already went through hell.
Right. And we know what did not work. And now we have a contract that works really, really well. We know the sticking points, the fine points, all this stuff. So, yeah,
Experience is definitely a great teacher, isn't it?
it really is.
Yeah. Well, we hope you learned from ours. Check out the show notes, babiesandbiz.com/86, I think is this episode number. Which one is it?
That's right, yep.
86. Yeah, and we're going to drop some other resources in there. Rachel talked about kindness over everything. One of our core values at Digital Harvest. We'll have some stuff on that. There's a
Yeah.
podcast that I was listening to when we were drafting up the notes for this one from our friend over at the Power of One podcast, Tim Roberts. He and his friend Michael shared this episode about business partnerships and red flags.
Yeah.
So that ended up being a big part of like the urgency thing that we saw in our experience came up in their conversation. I think that one's really worthwhile. Whether you're buying a business, thinking about selling one, thinking about going into business with somebody.
Yeah.
Those are really,
Yeah,
really
and
big.
you shared with me, they talk about if there's urgency to just make the deal, well, maybe there are things that when you dig deeper, they're going to be not advantageous for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So have the courage to take it slow. If the decision is right now, it'll be right in a week, in a month, in
Yes.
2 months.
Yes.
But if they're pushing for really quick, then you're not in a good situation.
Yeah. So we'd love to hear from you. If you go to babiesandbiz.com/86, you'll see the show notes. You can leave some comments and stuff there. You can also find us on social media at babiesandbizpod. Instagram, Facebook, we're on YouTube. We got a lot of stuff on YouTube if you didn't know that. And more articles being posted to the website. So it's not just the show notes and what we have here.
Right.
There's a lot of extra information touching on all the topics that come up here in the podcast. Those are well worth your read and checking those things out as well. So with that, we appreciate you for listening to the podcast. We'll catch you on the next one.
Bye for now.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Babies in Business Podcast. Who do you know that would benefit from hearing this episode? Share it with them and post about it on social media. You can find the show notes for this episode, free downloads, and connect with the rest of the community at babiesandbiz.com. We'll see you next time.